Okay, let's talk about all those things and the list of sort of setback. Because I think that's one of the values of the piece is just seeing all in one place everything that's gone wrong
Right.
For his administration. So what is that list?
I mean, wow, it's a lot to unpack here. The story did a couple things. It looked at his record, and it also, I also went out and talked to dozens of people close to City Hall to find out what they think so far. And, what they say is pretty astounding. And, the word disappointment just comes up over and over again. There are a lot of people involved in the running of this city, even many people who are his allies, who are just disappointed in the job he's done. And not just disappointed, but disappointed in like a surprised and a sad way, not in a mean way. They like Todd Gloria, and they have seen him navigate the politics for years and years and years, and they are kind of shocked by how poorly they think he is navigating the politics and doing stuff now. So I think that's kind of like the overview, and we got really into the history of it all. I mean, where do you want me to start?
Well, one of the interesting things is, that Gloria for many years has been this sort of beloved figure. As you get in, he was the interim mayor or mayor. And that period of his career, I think, instilled a whole lot of kind of warm feelings for him, both among Democrats and Republicans who viewed him as not only a good politician, but like a competent operator. So maybe start there and take us through how opinions have changed of his politicianing or his operating.
Sure. Let me just say one thing before I jump into that, too, that I think, it could be easy to see the criticism of him as just coming from the left, like you haven't done enough for me. But that is not the only criticism at all. Part of the criticism is like, you haven't done big things. You haven't laid out an agenda and accomplished it. But the other part of the criticism is like the city is just running badly and like you're not operationally getting things done. So this is not just like a progressive criticism of Todd Gloria is too moderate, though that is a criticism that's out there. I think there's a very big criticism that operationally, you can't even get water rate increases through, the kind of thing that you really need to get done. But to really answer your question, Jacob, yes, I think Todd Gloria was a beloved figure in San Diego politics. Scott could obviously speak to that a lot as long as he's been covering politics. But, he filed to run for mayor, I believe, for city council before he even turned 30 years old. He was elected when he was 30. He became mayor. Everybody thought he steadied the ship, and he was just this great hand. And not only that, he was ambitious. He got things done. He knew how to navigate different groups. Then he left and went to Sacramento for a few years. He came back. Everybody believed they were going to get the same Todd Gloria, and you talk to the people who knew him then, by and large, they're going to tell you that they don't see the same Todd Gloria.
Yeah. So you have to remember that was 2013, 14, when Mayor Bob Filner at the time, he collapses as he's accused of sexual assault. He resigns in this huge show of protest and but it was just bizarre. It was so bizarre and unstable. And then he, and then Todd came in, and he was not the interim mayor. To be clear, he was the council president, but he sort of assumed it. It's a perfect example of how you can be a leader and show leadership without like the actual title, right? When everybody talks about like, well, we have strong mayor form of government and that's wrong, and we have city manager. It doesn't matter the form of government. It's the leader in that place, right? And so he stood up. Everybody dubbed him the mayor. The iPad and everything was at the time was a big deal, and
what a time.
And so he was, and then he took that mantle as council president, steadied, put people in place to make sure it was okay, and then he went for big things, like you said. And he was kind of well-liked on all fronts. And there is a theory out there that Sacramento ruined him, that he went to Sacramento and became part of this legislative world.
Sure. I heard from somebody too who was, even though like he kind of took a back seat in Sacramento from the get-go, is another theory I heard out there.
Yeah.
So you think that ruined him?
Well, I don't know, ruined him. So he came back and he ran for mayor. I think the thing, like to your point, I love this list in the beginning where you sort of put it all together. He got in trouble with the pandemic and the vaccine mandate. The cops ended up really revolting against him. So he didn't get either. He didn't force them to get the vaccine,
right?
Nor did they stay happy with him.
Told them he'd fire them if they didn't get it, and then he backed out on it. So, he looked weak.
And then the biggest idea, the boldest thing he tried to push, this 1,000-bed shelter. He put a lot of capital into that, a lot of time into that, a lot of resources into trying to make that happen. And he just didn't get the votes at the city council.
Totally. And by all accounts, there was a breakdown in him attempting to get the votes. Just before the mega shelter, we had the camping ban where Gloria did get something done. He spent a lot of political capital on this. He ended up getting it through on a tight 5-4 vote. And it's unclear to me how much he actually whipped the votes that time, or he just happened to have people with him. Because when it came to do the mega shelter, he stumped really hard for it, but by all accounts, he did not whip the votes, and they thought they had the votes, and the votes just fell right through their hands.
But do you remember when I was reading that, do you remember when they were voting on the camping ban? Like, he was there, and he was pretty aggressive or assertive, when he was talking to council members, you guys need to, you need to approve this.
Absolutely.
You need to support it.
Yeah. So then we go through and there's all these big projects, the Midway Rising project, the thing that he cites as the most transformative thing that he could be stewarding. He decides to put it back on the ballot, the 30-foot height limit, to remove. He decides and leads the charge for how that's going to work, and then it falters at the court level. Now, they think there might be another path. They haven't announced that or support whatever path that might be to get that done. The convention center is not being, expanded the way they thought. The Civic Center Plaza, he pulled the plug on the redevelopment that he, said we're going to do to change this heart of the city. The transit and climate change stuff, and then the big one for me, the structural budget deficit. He was last year at the State of the City said we're going to fix once and for all the structural budget deficit. And not only is it not fixed a year later, but it is in more trouble than ever with that threat now to repeal the trash fee that I think everybody can say didn't come out well. And if they do repeal the trash fee, could send an already teetering budget into like a discussion about insolvency.
Right. Absolutely. Not to mention La Jolla seceding. Not to mention he talked a lot in his campaign about connecting the airport to the trolley line. Another thing we're not really any closer on. He came in saying, I'm going to bring big city energy to San Diego. This was his whole platform. It was like what hope and change were to Barack Obama. And, now he's telling us how difficult it is to be a big city mayor.
So you did an interview with him. Let's pull that part out. This was part of that discussion.
Yeah.
These number of years have been challenging, and that would have been true just because they included a pandemic and, federal challenges and other issues. But trying to shift the city to where it needs to be in order to be successful, that was never going to be an easy task. And being a big city mayor is a difficult job. But I believe we're making progress. And when taking the longer view, I believe that this time will be seen as what was necessary to get the city where it needs to go.
The thing that I can't help but think about when I hear him talking about big city energy is what I feel like I've learned more about San Diego in the past couple of years is that people don't want San Diego to have big city energy. And he's coming in, and I think he's kind of saying that in this quote. It's okay, we're doing the things that we need to be done, even though they don't feel good right now. But hasn't really been able to push through that sentiment that people don't want this to be Like, people aren't ready to see this become a city with like these like big transit networks and to give up their cars and like all of this like new housing and new development and stuff. And I feel like he's like run up against that a lot, which isn't necessarily an excuse, but it's like you had a vision that maybe was misaligned, or you just like didn't really have like the guts or operational know how to like make it happen. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I think it's interesting to hear him talk about it being difficult, right? You heard him in there mention the pandemic and the federal stuff. He's talking about Donald Trump being president. His team also will mention the economy as these kind of forces outside their control. And there's another really short bite from the interview, which I'll just tell you, where he said to me, I pray every day that the macro atmospherics of what are happening will change to make it easier to do this job. And I think that tells you a lot. It tells you a lot, because it makes it sound like he doesn't think it's his job to fight those macro issues. He needs the macro issues to change so it'll make it easier for him to maybe do the more practical things. That's what he'll talk to you about a lot. Pave streets, keep police employed. These are really important things to him. He will say to you over and over again. And so that quote tells me that he doesn't think it's his job to fight those macro forces. And I think that's a big part of why there's so much disappointment.
I think that's a really good insight, because what he clearly sees himself as like this swimmer in these waves of like change and big forces that he can't control. He just barely like keeps things together while these waves crash and tumble around him and throw him around. And I think that's what's so hard about this, because I think a lot of people look at a mayor, especially one with those sorts of visions, and say you need to still be able to pull stuff out.
Right.
There's no reason you couldn't have done the environmental study of Midway Rising and the height limit better. There's no reason you couldn't have solved the structural budget deficit. Like, they can say like, oh, it's too hard, the macro forces don't do it. I'm sorry, like, corporations lay off people. There are ways to do the budget deficit if you want, and it hurts, and there's different things. But if you say we're going to solve the structural budget deficit, there's no Donald Trump reason why you can't do that. There's no other reason except that your own fear of those forces.
Is dealing with the unions hard? Of course it is. But there's that police budget is a third of the budget. Are we going to look there?
Yeah.
Are we going to look at white collar workers for the city? Are we going to look at blue collar? There's a lot of options that all seem to be too hard.
The trash fee repeal is not happening because of Donald Trump. It's happening mostly because you and your city told the public that it was going to be $25 a month, and then you came out and said it's going to be $50 a month after they voted. That's a big deal.
It's interesting to me to blame Trump, too, because Trump hasn't been in office the majority
a year.
Exactly.
It's been a year.
And it's mostly been a Democratic administration.
And the economy has not cratered. It's definitely, the inflation has been bad, but it has not cratered. And wait till it does, like that, there's going to be some big things. All of these things point to the one you could look to is like the homeless shelter, mega shelter. Maybe that was the wrong idea from the beginning. And we can't say like you failed on that, because maybe we're all happy he did. I don't know. But the point is like that was supposed to be a big part. And that brings up the other thing that I think is core to your story, which is that his relationship with a 9-person city council who are 9 Democrats is as dysfunctional as I think possibly can be. And they seem to all agree, and he doesn't. You talk to him about this. Listen to this clip.
I mean, what I hear you referencing is, a single-digit number of votes against what are probably hundreds or maybe thousands that have gone smoothly and without observation. I mean, I think I would characterize the situation as extremely functional in we're moving the city forward. And, our budgets have been adopted, big initiatives around housing, homelessness, the environment, other issues have advanced, and the work of the city continues. in a democracy, in co-equal branches of government, there's always going to be conflict and tension.
I felt like we were just so being gaslit right there. It was so interesting to like read on one hand what people were saying about like, yeah, his office does not work well with us, and they don't know how to count votes and all these things. And he's like, nope, nothing to see here.
Extremely
It's working
functional.
well.
Well,
What is
Extremely
even that,
functional.
right?
Not even just like what they're saying, but even just like publicly and as media, we've watched them basically like publicly fight at all these like I think of like the budget meetings like back in June where he's basically like yelling at them like, you guys need to get it together. Like, and I'm like, okay, like that doesn't sound super functional.
They have never before prescribed specific cuts to his management through the budget process, to his management team. They did that. He vetoed it. They overrode it. It has never happened that bad, that dysfunction. There's just two realities. I talk about Trump. That was the most Trumpian thing I have ever heard him say, because he was just trying to directly convince us that what we see was not what was happening. Just like you said, that's pure gaslighting. Like, no, like everything's extremely functional. What?
It's so funny.
That's bananas.
It's so funny because that word Trumpian comes up again and again, and I bet Todd is shocked and appalled by that, because on the surface he could not be more different than Donald Trump. He is endearing, charismatic. You know, you feel bad getting in a big fight with him about some of this stuff. But people just over and over again say that they have a with us or against us mentality, and people bring them constructive feedback and they say, hey, none of the council members think your relationship with them is going pretty well. And then they turn around and say it's extremely functional. I don't know if he believes that or what, but it is a befuddling statement.
It really is. Yeah. I think that there's these moments too where you can literally point to like the mega shelter, the water votes. The water vote comes in. They say we need to raise water rates 4 years in a row to be able to pull, together the funds we need for the debts that we have made. My chief of staff is the chair of the water authority. Like, we're doing everything we can to keep those costs low. This has to happen. And his top ally, Steve Whitburn, right? Is there anyone
Yes.
closer to him on the council than Stephen Whitburn?
No, there is not. There is absolutely not.
And Stephen Whitburn comes out at the first vote of that and says, under no circumstance will we do that.
Dead on arrival.
It's dead on arrival. Like this thing that if you do kill it on arrival, there is like the water system's going bankrupt.
This is the guy
Like-
who carries his initiatives.
Yeah.
The guy who carries his initiatives through council.
And then Kent Lee says, it's time city leadership own up to its responsibility to clearly communicate challenges the cities face rather than pass blame onto anyone else, and that the city hall is eroding people's trust with all these different ways it's communicating. And to say like there's no disconnect, it's extremely functional. This should not be a debate. And I get you want to let council members, show their frustration that ratepayers have about these increases. But you can't be having that. Like, and they shut it down. They're still going to have, just like we talked about last week, like rather than get punched in the face once and just deal with the rate increases, they decided to only do 2 of the years of rate increases, so that they are literally planning to get punched in the face again in 2 years. And
To be fair, I think I said balls, but yes.
Something about stepping on a rake every day.
yeah. And I just it's wild that it's like that, 2 different realities.
Governance requires a back and forth, a horse trading that people close to City Hall say is not happening. It's like Todd Gloria in the moment will say, on the whole, sometimes they don't even know what he wants. Then other times he'll say what he wants, but then there seems to be a complete background, just a complete failure in people's ability to negotiate out these things together. And so, I think citizens of San Diego should be like really disturbed at this dysfunction. And that's why it was so important to tell this story, not just for a lot of the political insiders of this city, but, you know, I mean, we all need to be upset.
And there is such a, I mean, the us versus them thing is such a big part of this. There's like a fortification that happens, and you see it with his press people. You see it with him. You see the way that he communicates with the public. The last state of the city where he said, "I want you to think of the county." Every single time that you see a homeless person struggling, and that the county, this is all on the county, is just such a perfect example of this sort of projection, right? Inevitably, no leader will be able to do everything, but Todd Gloria seems to think that he can't do anything.
Yeah, he is burdened to the point that he can't do anything, and it's because of the council, and it's because of the county,
because of the
because
state,
of Donald Trump, and it's because of all these inflation issues, and it's because of us, it's because of the press, it's because of the everything that's happening that's wrong is somebody else's fault, which is like, maybe it's true, but that's not what you hear, what you want to hear from somebody you're charged with these things. And I think there's so many moments where he like avoids showing leadership, like these questions about the county tax going forward at the same time that the city tax increase is going forward, or, you know, there should be somebody making the decision about who should go first, or when something should happen, or what the region should prioritize, and he should be leading that, and he didn't.
You know, Scott said something to me once that I've actually thought about over and over again, which is that I think these people in these public positions of power, if they want to be making a change on a regular basis, they have to learn how to ride the lightning, is what Scott was saying. And I think that's true. I think there's a real element of deep caution to the Gloria administration. And he will tell you he's a very practical person. He probably wouldn't like that word cautious. But I think you can't just like wait and wait and wait and wait to stick your neck out on something until you think everybody supports it. If you wait that long, the moment is gone, the vibes are gone, you're not gonna accomplish stuff, you know? And I think because some people will say that he's a bit, you know, I heard coward come up a lot, and I didn't really bring that up in the story because he wasn't a coward on the vaccine mandate. He wasn't a coward on the camping ban. He wasn't a coward on the mega shelter. But I think he waited too long. He read the polls wrong. He read the politics wrong. I mean, I think he read the politics right, the polls right, that most people support vaccines, or that most people support more homeless shelters. But he hasn't been like riding the lightning and making decisions when you have a moment to make a decision. You have to make the decision in the moment when it's presented to you. You can't just wait and wait and wait, or it's just going to constantly backfire like it's backfiring.
But then it's like he himself is setting those expectations for the public, like to say, this is big city energy. We're going to do this. Like at his last state of the city, we're going to right size this ship. We're going to do this. We're going to finally fix the budget deficit. And then you don't do it because you waited too long for that moment, or you were afraid to do something. It's like, well, what can you expect? Obviously, people are going to be upset.
And the best political leaders, I think, not only understand the laws of gravity and ride that lightning, but they also understand that they can change the laws of gravity. The best political leaders are the ones who make issues relevant, who change public opinion by the power of the bully pulpit, or like a really dope Instagram reel, or whatever however you want to think about it. But that doesn't seem to be something that he's tried to engage in so much.
Yeah, I think that's where it's like, you know, where are we going? Like, what are you trying to see forward now? And I don't think we've gotten that sense. Now, like I said, there's one more year before it starts the conversation about the next mayor, and then another year before that's like the major conversation about the future of the city.